Back to the ping pong ball concept. If we think about, okay, our ping pong ball, or sorry, if we think about the center of our center, okay, so center of your center, okay, let's say it's going to be roughly about here in relation to pelvis, all right. If you imagine that you had a little ping pong ball just floating or hovering in the center of your center, and if we worked with gravity and we thought about moving your skeleton, okay, so we think about moving the skeleton instead of moving muscles, all right, how would we get that ping pong ball to roll to the tip of the tailbone? So the pelvis would make a little movement like this, so we'd have a very little small pelvic tilt. And how much I'm moving the pelvis here is probably a lot more than what we would need to do, all right? So I'm just trying to give you the idea of what the direction is that we would be moving the pelvis. So it's moving it that way a little bit, all right? So this idea about moving the skeleton instead of moving muscles, all right? So we're always looking for the most effortless way to move. That is one of the key principles of optimal biomechanics, okay? So we put in the most minimal amount of effort to get maximum output or effect. So one of the ways that we can start to have better biomechanics or a way of moving that's more effortless is if we think about moving our skeleton instead of moving our muscles, okay? So of course we have to move muscles to move our skeleton, but it's actually very helpful to pretend that we don't have any muscles and just imagine that you could just talk to your bones and get your bones to move, okay? And that helps us to do less tightening or contracting than necessary, because a lot of times what happens when we move, we're just doing a lot more than we need to do, okay? Normally, if you just ask someone to do this pelvic tilt, so they're tilting the pelvis that way, so the ping pong ball would roll towards the tip of the tailbone, or if we give you the side on view, getting the pelvis to tip like this, what people would generally tend to do when they do that is clench their belly muscles and clench their buttocks. So they kind of go clench and clench, all right? Now, whenever we get into a really contractive holding pattern or any feeling of clenching or holding strong in our body, that's going to be a big problem to the horse, because that's like putting a big handbrake on the horse, and it makes it very difficult for the horse to move correctly, because we're blocking all the little movements that need to happen through the horse's spine. So the reason that I use this idea of a ping pong ball is just so people can just think about their skeleton and think about, how am I going to reorganize my skeleton to get the ping pong ball to roll with gravity a little bit towards the tailbone. So it's a very, very minimal movement, okay? And when we do that in our body, what's happening is our center of gravity shifts down and back, okay? And this is going to influence the horse to shift their center of gravity back. So what we need to do is have his like center of gravity shifting back a little bit towards that back end. So you've got to think about your ping pong ball, if you can remember that concept, okay? With the horse, they actually need to shift their center of gravity up and back, okay? But we're going to take ours down and back. Whether we're on the ground working with the horse at liberty or online, we can influence the horse just through starting to make this little weight shift or doing this movement in our skeleton, okay? And when we do it when we're riding, the effect of that is compounded, manifold, because you're in so much physical contact with that horse.